Hello, my name is Donald Peck. I'm a pastor at the Loami United Methodist Church. I make these videos so that you may have something for your in-home worship or for your in-home Bible study. The lesson today, it comes from Psalm 91 and then Romans chapter 10. The psalm reads like this: You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, My refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, and no scourge shall come near your tent or dwelling place. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Those who love me I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name. And when they call to me, I will answer them. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue them and honor them. With long life, I will satisfy them and show them my salvation. And then in Romans chapter 10, the word of the Apostle Paul, it begins with verse 8. The word is near you, on your lips and in your heart. That is the word of faith that we proclaim. Because if you confess with your lips that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For one believes with the heart and is so justified, and one confesses with the mouth and so is saved. The scripture says, no one who believes in him will be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek. The same Lord is Lord of all and is generous to all who call on him. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, the discussion in Romans comes from the one question: who is eligible for God's grace? Who is worthy to be saved? Wow. Well, as the early church grew in numbers, the cultural background of all the converts became very diverse. And this mixture mirrored the racial diversity of Rome, which included believers from faiths of Israel, Asia, Greece, Africa, and anyone else or any other culture doing business in Rome. And this was a metropolitan city. In the first century, it was over 1 million strong in population, making it an economic epicenter of the Mediterranean region. Now, many of the converts to the Christian faith came from a polytheistic belief and found transition to a monotheistic belief, worshiping many gods to worshiping only one God. They found this confusing at best. And regarding grace, their faiths all contained an element of works or a pay-to-play kind of a concept for grace. For instance, the more you sacrifice or the more you give or the more you work for your God, the more grace or favors you receive from the deity. Well, the Christian Jews took the lead in this discussion, and it was right down their alley as far as a pay-to-play type approach to salvation. And what they wanted in the Christian church was a trial period for people from polytheistic backgrounds, along with steps and activities to prove their worth of God's grace. Wow. Does this sound familiar? I know religious groups in this 21st century that expect the same type of thing. Well, the apostle says, not so. And he outlines in verse 9 that if you confess with your lips and believe in your heart, you will be saved. And nothing more. Nothing more. And the statement is repeated in verse 10. Well, this is what we want to talk about this week. Lessons. and the first lesson you need to get across, and we need to understand that no human element nor no human organization can limit or dictate the terms of God's grace. And it's illustrated. It was illustrated here not too long ago when the Roman Catholic priests in our area announced the denial of the Holy Eucharist to politicians in this area who voted for abortion. Well, I want at least one comment about that, and that is that it was a bit presumptuous to think that politicians actually care what the priests think, or even what they do. Politicians are an animal unto themselves, and they will do what it is that they do, irregardless of the approval of the church or the leaders of the church. And this denial of grace by the church plays right into the rule book of any pay-to-play scheme, which is what the politicians are the best of. They put themselves into the same game. The church puts themselves into the same game of a quid pro quo, which is played and operated by the political machine everywhere. Basically, this is what the church was saying. Look, you do this kind of behavior, then we'll give you God's grace. I hope this sounds ludicrous to you, because it is, and that's the point. Now, Paul said to respond to evil with good. And in this case, the church was responding to evil with evil. And in the case of the priests, the Holy Communion is God's gift to all mankind, paid for in blood, and should not be limited to the dispense of those who seem worthy by another person. Well, just what is it that you need to do to be saved? And this is the question of the day. What can I do to be saved? Well, what Paul presents in Romans chapter 10 is not new, for the Old Testament prophets said the same thing, and it was expressed in at least one place, Joel chapter 2, verse 32. And it reads like this, "And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." All right? Well, so let's go back to Romans chapter 10, verse 9, and deconstruct this statement. To be saved, first, you must accept the truth of the incarnation. The truth of the fact that God became flesh, human flesh, and the babe that we celebrate at Christmas time. That the babe of Bethlehem's manger is the Lord of life and glory, and that the Jesus of the New Testament is the Lord, or Yahweh, or Jehovah, of the Old Testament. Now, there are books and disciplines given to the subject of the historical Jesus, and this whole study alone. One is the quest for historical. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. One is the quest for the historical Jesus by Albert Schweitzer. He delves into the biblical text and historical evidence to deconstruct the many myths of Jesus' life that has been propagated by throughout the centuries by churches and studies and authors. This is a seminal work, and Schweitzer's book brings into focus the social and political currents of the time of Jesus to rebuke previous authors' hypothesis and form an entirely new one on his own. This was a milestone text in its time, and Schweitzer's book was so dominant that virtually no new scholarly investigations of the historical Jesus were published for decades after its initial release. Now, more than a century later, the quest of the historical Jesus remains a standard against which religious and academic studies are measured. So, for you and me, we need to get the facts. Use a non-biblical book to sort through the history of the man Jesus, such as Albert Schweitzer's, or any others that have been more recently written. Accept what the universe already knows, and that is the story of the man Jesus. Once you grasp this, remember the man called Jesus is God in the flesh. This is truth, and you need to accept it, and you need to base your faith on this historical fact that the man called Jesus is God in the flesh. All right? That's the first thing you need to do to be saved. Second, and this is pretty important, you need and you must accept the truth of his resurrection with all that it involves. God has raised the man called Jesus from the dead as proof that Christ had completed the work necessary for our salvation, and that God is satisfied with that work. And in addition to the closing chapters of the gospel, we need you to read the book of Acts and the 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians. And there are other books that you can read, non-biblical books, one being Resurrected, the historical truth of the most important event in human history and why it matters. And this is by Dr. John Morris. You can get it on Amazon, I checked. Again, using the mind to absorb these facts of history. And again, we're just dealing in facts. Using the mind to absorb these facts of history, accept the truth of what you've read, and believe in the resurrection, and that it is your destiny to be resurrected as well. So, you accept the truth that God in the flesh was Jesus Christ. You accept the truth of his resurrection, and also, more importantly, of our resurrection. For if God in the flesh was resurrected to heaven, so will we be. And you'll see that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Third, Paul says you must believe. You must believe with the heart. Believing this with the heart means believing with not only one's mental which is the logic, cognitive, calculating, rational, abstract, and theoretical part of who you are. All right? And then become emotional. Here is the connection of the mind to the seat of the emotion. This is the third step. You make your connection of the mind to that of your heart. You believe these facts. In fact, you believe these facts about the incarnation and the resurrection, these two things. You believe them to the extent that you are willing to change your behavior and live the life that Jesus taught. It's decision time for you now. Do I really believe this? Do I believe it with the intensity that I will change my life? Whoa. You're to that point now in the process of becoming saved. Now, words to describe at this point may be ardent, blazing, burning, charged, demonstrative, fervent, fervid, or feverish. Okay? But you need to do that. Yes, you need to make a decision. Your mind needs to say, yes, I believe this. And your heart says, not only do I believe it to the extent that I will change my life and follow Jesus as my Lord. Then the last thing. And some people confuse this step of public confession. All right? Last, you must confess with your lips. You don't need to do this in public. You don't need to wait until there's a church service and then go and confess to the people around you. No. You don't need to go to the coffee shop at Hardee's and confess with your lips. No. Of your own volition, done with your own will or choosing, you must say, lip with your lips, say the words that you believe in the story of Jesus and you want to live for Him as He teaches. When you do this on your own volition, not persuaded by some soul winner that has come to your home, but on your own volition, you must say, I believe. I believe. An example of this is in the story of the thief on the cross with Jesus. When it became apparent to Jesus that this man believes in who He is, He said to him, "This day you'll be with me in paradise." It's a pretty important part of the process of salvation for you. You must confess with your lips to yourself. Say to yourself, I believe this, and I want to change my life and live for Him. You are saved. I don't know how to make it any more plain, and neither did Paul. The Apostle Paul made it very plain. Read the lesson, verses 9 and 10. Now, let's switch. Let's go to the Psalm 91. You, a believer who's just been saved, you're a believer now. You're a part of the family of God. You are part of those who live in the shelter of the Most High. Look at the lesson, Psalm 91. You are part of the group or part of the ones who abide in the shadow of the Almighty. And you may say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Wow. A word picture for this verse is the protective covering offered by the wings of a mother bird. You can see that. I've seen I grew up on a farm, and I've watched hens, chickens, mother chickens, settle upon her nest of eggs. The last thing she does is to spread out her wings and very carefully adjust the feathers of her breast so that all the eggs are covered. And then she brings her wings in. That is the word picture for you when you think of this verse. You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, my refuge, my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. The Assyrian prophets also used the same image to promise divine protection to the king in the context of physical danger from their enemies. The goddess of Ishtar says to Esarhaddon, I raised you between my wings, and I will see your success. It's a common image, a common picture. Years ago, I was invited to join the Masons, a brotherhood of like-minded individuals that had worldwide connections. And had I been in a different situation, and had I been in a community where I knew that I would live there for the rest of my life, I would have pursued this, but I did not, because I knew that I was not going to live in that community for much more than a year or two. I did not pursue this invite, and that's why. But I came to appreciate the concept of connection and the brotherhood that they offer. And I suppose that if I had accepted that, become a member, and then moved to another town, the first thing I would have done is to seek out the brothers and the Mason brothers, and I would have instant friendship. Well, I want to introduce you to a brotherhood that is found in all who proclaim Jesus as Lord and Savior. David expressed it as all who abide in the shadow of the Almighty. That is you and me. We collectively, all over this world, enjoy the benefits of being a part of the brotherhood of Jesus. Look in verse 11 of the Psalm. He will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, and the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Those who love me I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name. This is the community of faith of which you are now a part. I hope this helps. God bless.